Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and whether any middle grade author should ever compare their book to Harry Potter. At a corner table by the fire are three people. One of them is wondering whether he can compare his book to Chronicles of Narnia crossed with Percy Jackson crossed with Harry Potter? And that's me, Matthew Mellema. And welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between faith, art, and storytelling. Our goal is to help you connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories in order to understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. Now, if any of y'all in the audience have ever looked into getting any kind of book published in any kind of capacity, then you probably know about comps. Comps are what we fancy people in the know call comparable books. So whenever you pitch a book, agents and editors and publishers and executives want to know about the comps. What books are similar to your book? Are those books successful? Well, readers of those books want to read your book. Where could a reader find your book on, say, a bookstore shelf? Now, for most authors, the process of finding comps is both stressful and annoying. You need to find other books that are popular, so you show that there's a market, but not too popular, because that just makes you look tacky. These books need to have recent publication dates, and they need to capture not only similar genre elements, but some essence of the book. But of course, the comp can't be too close either. Now, I can't begin to describe the horror that comes from finding another book on like Amazon and worrying that it's just like yours. Has somebody already written your book? But this episode, I want to be more than just inside baseball for authors. I think the exercise of finding comps has lessons for all sorts of storytellers and all sorts of people. The discipline of taking your story, your precious crystalline snowflake of a story, and viewing it as one of many similar stories is pretty jarring and also maybe helpful. That is what we are here to discuss. And for this discussion, I'm joined here by Mandy Hauk. Mandy, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Doing well. You're the one who suggested this topic, and I know you have had comps on the brain.
Yes, I have. Would you like me to say why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was why I did the significant eyebrow lift.
Yes. Yes. I've been in the process of working with my agent to submit my most recent manuscript to publishers, and that's just one of the things you have to do. And what my agent likes to do is make up her own list separate from me making up my list. So like, I don't know what she's going to do and she doesn't know what I'm going to do. And so that way, we don't influence one another too much.
Okay, I have many more questions about this.
Okay.
But first, let's bring in the third person at our corner table by the fire, Evangeline Denmark. Evangeline, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And you are also a survivor of the comp wars.
I am, yes. Though, not without scars.
The walking wounded. Exactly. Yes, and that is something all of us have in common. All of us have at some point done this comp thing. I've done it for two different types of books, which I'll get to in a little bit. I did not enjoy either process. One process I liked less, but we'll get to that. So Mandy, this is freshest in your mind, so let's get your take. I gave sort of the 30,000 foot view of why comps are considered important. Do you feel that comps are genuinely important? And if so, why?
I do think they're important because so many submissions come in to publishers, and the comps are part of that one page, the proposal, the first page. Mm-hmm. And so as much as authors would love to think that every editor is going to read every page that they send them, they cannot do that. Mm-hmm. And different editors are focusing on different types of books at any given time. So it's helpful for their slush pile reader, and for anyone who reads it, get on its pathway to to whatever acquisitions editor it's going to. It's helpful because it will tell them, like, if all my comps are Western romances and that agent doesn't do Western books or romances, then that's not going to waste their time. So it's important for them to not waste their time, and it's important for me because ideally my agent is paying attention to who she's sending it to, and she is going to know that these comps are going to attract whatever editor she's sending it to. And that's an important impression, because as huge as the publishing world seems, I've heard from lots of agents and editors, it's actually very small. And they remember...
Oh, crap.
They remember specific, like, stories of the author that complained to them and ranted at them after they said no, or the author that sent their manuscript on hot pink paper with silver ink. All these weird, you don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons. And if my agent were to send my proposal of Western romance crossed with aliens or whatever.
Wait, what?
No. Oh. He's all excited. I'll read that. No.
Did you ever see the movie Cowboys and Aliens from around 2010?
No, see? That is how much of a joke.
You are missing out.
Okay, well.
It's a real movie.
Well, if you want to write
Do you want to guess what it's about?
Cowboys and aliens.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But all that to say, if an agent representing a certain author were to send a wildly off-base proposal to an editor, that you risk irking them and sticking. Like, you don't want to be memorable for those.
Gotcha.
For those reasons. So
okay, so would it be fair to say you think it's useful because, first of all, it's just sort of a necessary thing for, like, the agents and editors? They need a way to quickly, like, categorize your book.
Yes.
And two, it helps show the agents and editors that you've done some modicum of homework. Like, I'm giving you comps based on the stuff you do. I'm not just throwing this onto the ether. I'm targeting you because of what you do.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
I think so. And I think it also just shows a seriousness of craft, because I would guess there's probably some authors out there self-submitting, I would probably guess, who are like, oh no, there are no comps. No one's ever written a book like this before. And I guarantee you, nobody is reading past that sentence if someone says that. So it's professional. It's a professional courtesy, and it's useful.
Okay. There we go. So those are some reasons to justify comps. Evangeline, what is your broad take on comps? Useful, not useful? And if so, anything else you'd like to add to the useful or unuseful pile?
I thought you were going to ask me to just, counter argue here. Just like, they're not useful because it's on the spot. I think it's actually a good exercise for the author, to look for them, even though we do all, I think, hate it. I'm not sure I've ever met an author who loved the process. But one thing that's really useful for the author is to have their finger on the pulse of the market already, which is hard. And
I don't like doing it.
I know. It
makes me feel nervous.
It does. Well, you're seeing books like yours and you're like, okay, well, it's been done. Like you were saying, it's too close to mine, or, this is what's popular right now, or look at, how many books this author has managed to produce in 5 years when I have not managed to produce one. There's lots of reasons that make it hard to kind of keep up with that. But the reason it's useful is because you can quickly identify what is like yours, and and give those comps when your agent is getting ready to send your proposal.
Yeah. So
painful though it is.
For me, it was hard because all the comps that I was thinking of were too old.
Yeah. I have had the same. In fact, I think maybe not the first proposal. But yeah, one of my earlier proposals, I had the same problem. And part of that was because I was doing kind of a spin-off of a classic, which I've talked about before, the Wuthering Heights novel. So people like every few years, do something like that. There's, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, or, whatever it is. And so those comps are around still sometimes. So yeah, it's hard not to just, oh, look at this. It's just like mine, or it's the right comparison, but then it's too old. And I don't know, why is that not good though? Why is that? I mean, okay, it's not on trend, but I think we probably all want to write books that have some staying power.
Yeah, I disagree with, I don't think I object to that aspect that they have to be new.
Current. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and if we're going to like the two key reasons that we've been talking about for the comps, there's one, the sort of cheat sheet for the editors and agents, which I totally get. Like that makes sense to me. The second one is showing what is current with the market, in that I understand it to a point, but I think more broadly, I agree with what you both were saying, because I understand why editors would want to know, like this part is useful. Okay, this author, did they have their finger on the pulse of the market as it is right now? It's not like they did some Googling 5 years ago and that's what they have. It's like they've been on the whole time, they're keeping up with it. Here it is, it's updated. There's value in that. If nothing else, it shows that the author is willing to put in the homework. But to the extent that that is a useful tool in like projecting sales, I'm really dubious, because it's always by its nature going to be behind where the wave is, right?
Agreed.
Definitely.
The things that really hit are the ones that start the wave, or they're at the front of the wave. If I'm showing, hey, I'm pitching you a book that is similar to popular books that came out like 6 months ago. Well, the time my book is out, that's like what, a year, 2 years down the road.
Exactly.
It's already going to be behind the trend. So I don't understand that part of it.
I don't either, because like when everyone was chasing the vampire trend.
Yep.
I mean, how many vampire books?
Can you, yeah.
Right?
I mean, that trend has a shelf life.
Exactly. And so how did the first vampire, like what comp was that?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that was the one letter that was like, this book has never been written. No, kidding.
The one they were
My
like,
goodness, this woman, Stephanie Myers, is correct.
Yeah.
It hasn't been written. Okay, so those are sort of some big picture thoughts about the use of comps in general, what agents do with them. So now let's sort of dive into the weeds here a little bit. Mandy, let's start with you, because again, this is freshest for you.
Yeah.
To the extent you can, don't want you to disclose too much here. Can you give us a rundown of what your book is about, and how you went about selecting comps and what your process was?
Oh, okay.
Again, to the extent you can, don't want you to sell the farm as you're going out to editors.
I haven't done an elevator pitch in a long time. Well, my book is set in 1929, and it centers on a girl who was born in a hobo jungle, which is what they called hobo camps, and born and raised there. And she's pretty sure she's around 14 years old. And then due to tragic circumstances, because that's what has to happen in books, due to tragic circumstances, she hops a train with a couple of hobos and escapes to a new town, and we see what happens. And is it a better place or a worse place? I don't know.
Okay. This is definitely this would be in like the literary field.
Yes, it's historical literary fiction.
Okay.
So, so one of my comps, I thought for sure, was going to be Orphan Train. I don't know if you guys have read that. It is lovely, and of course I'm blanking on the author. But it's character driven, which so is mine. And there are orphans who
get on
have
a
to
train.
go. Even without the train, it's the journey, coming of age, traumatic. The invisible people kind of is sort of my theme. The people on the margins, but it's too old.
Yeah,
so I will
Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein.
Right, Christina Baker Klein. Thank you. I will say that I should mention
Published
that
in 2013. So again,
Right.
like
So that's too
it's
old.
10, so it's 10 years old, but
Yeah.
that would be considered far too old for this
Correct.
exercise. Yeah.
Now she has written some books since then. So what my agent did, but see, my agent broke it down not just books that were comps, but also authors. So like she said something like for readers of so and so, and she included Christina Baker Klein as an author comp. So she broke it down differently. She had some comps that had to do with the fact that it was historical fiction. She had one comp that when I checked everything she talked about out of the library, from the library, the ones I hadn't read yet. And I was reading it and I was very confused. And then the reason she chose it is because it's marginalized people like mine, but also it's multiple narrators. And mine is way multiple narrators. I have a lot. I have I didn't even realize it until she said it. I have more than 12 narrators.
What?
I know. Now all the people listening, all the I hate multiple narrators are like, well,
I have one narrator.
forget that.
I thought about adding a second. I was like, no, that's too ambitious.
I didn't even do, I tried to do one, but I apparently can't do that because all 3 of my books now have had multiple, but not quite as many as this. But anyway, so so she chose that one because it's multiple narrators and it's also marginalized people. And so she, like I was saying, she chose some books because of writing style, some because of theme, some because of some similarity in plot, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there were some where she just said it's for people who like these authors.
Yeah, and that sort of illustrates a broader point, right? That there are multiple levels to compare this on.
Right.
And that can be very tricky. Like when you're at the stage you're at, Mandy, my impression is your agent has a little bit more space. She has a little bit more runway to have it's similar in this way to these books, in this way to these books. But I'm guessing earlier on in your journey, when you're trying to find an agent, you have 3 books in a query letter, right?
I have been very lucky. I met both of my previous agents at conferences, and then this agent, my second agent, when she got promoted to be vice president of the agency, so she passed me on to this one. So I have written query letters, but they never succeeded. So apparently I am very bad at the comp thing or something.
Did you include comps in your query letters? Because I don't think I did.
I think I did, but I probably did it poorly.
I kind of did, but I did a bad job, which I'll get to soon.
I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. So I mean, memory, I don't know. The last query letter I wrote, first and last. No, I'm kidding. The last time I wrote a query letter, it was for my previous book, so I can't even remember what I would have said, but I did not know then the art of comps, and I for sure didn't know it was supposed to be recent, so I probably flubbed it.
I don't think I ever included a comp.
Well, you get for listeners, and again, for those of you who aren't currently writing a novel for publication, first of all, good for you. I look forward to hearing about how you're living a successful life apart from all this. But
without the angst.
Yeah, but the term here, a query letter, is basically a one-page letter. It's sort of like an elevator pitch that you send to a literary agent, with the idea that the literary agent will agree to represent you, and then the agent is sort of your key to the publishing houses. Yes. So then once you're on board with the agent, they prepare the more formal book proposals to the publishers. But before you can do that, you need to get the agent. And the way to get the agent is the query letter.
Horrible
and if you look
thing.
Online, there are approximately 2 trillion different pieces of non-compatible advice on what you need for a query letter.
Oh, yes. That is true.
They're so non-compatible. It's like when I was looking up how to boil an egg the other day, the best way to boil an egg to get the peel off, and literally completely opposing advice.
Yep.
Cold water, no, whatever.
That's why whenever you have a parenting question, don't Google it.
Yeah.
You'll get 2 conflicting pieces of advice, both saying if you don't do this, your child will murder someone.
Yeah.
Or ask anyone on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's funny now that we're sitting here thinking about it. So like I said, my agent kind of gave me the homework of thinking of comps. And now that I think about it, I don't think she used any of mine in the proposal. The only one, there were 2 that we agreed on. So I said
let's
Orphan
discuss
Train.
those. Okay, so Orphan Train.
I said Orphan Train, and then she had mentioned Christine Baker Klein as a comp, as an author. We did that without talking to each other.
And for Orphan Trains, pretty similar subject matter, sort of
Right.
excluded people in that sort of environment, sort of the hobos famously would ride the rails.
Correct.
And also, just it's more of a literary bent.
Right, but like I said, she didn't actually use that title. She used that author. So, and I think the same thing, whatever, there was another book I mentioned, she didn't use that book, but she used the author. So it was actually pretty cool. And a couple of people, she said, were people that I would never, even, I was flabbergasted, clearly, you can tell. I'm speechless. When is Mandy speechless? Yeah, some of the people that she said, I was like, okay, you're dumb. There's no way that I'm like that author. So, and that's another part that's hard about the comps. Because we've all talked about imposter syndrome. And so the idea that now I'm supposed to tell you what successful author I am like, I'm sorry, have you met me? I don't think I have no idea.
It's
this is why
it's Fyodor Dostoevsky, Homer, and Mandy. Just three tiers
totally.
right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Put me up there on that Hall of Fame, whatever. So it's very, I don't know, it kind of makes me kind of feel kind of icky.
Well,
am I boasting,
Well, that's just always weird, right?
Yes.
Because you need to sell yourself and your potential there. But also it shows the value of a good agent.
Yes.
Where presumably she really has her finger on the pulse of where the industry's going.
Let's hope so.
So she's going to be able to find deeper cuts than most of the rest of us would. And that shows the value right there, where she made these comps where you're like, oh, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, exactly.
My last proposal that went out, my agent didn't even ask me for. Oh, my last proposal that went out, my agent didn't even ask me for comps. I never even saw the proposals. So some agents, I guess, just do it
themselves
differently because, I think the first few proposals that I put together, I put those together, every single part of them, and then gave it to my agent. And of course, they had feedback as well and, went back and forth. But then the last one I didn't even see.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I didn't put together comps. My previous two agents did it without me.
Yeah.
And so that was good. I will say that is one thing I really like about this agent is she really has made this a partnership, and it's I've had a lot more homework, but it's exciting and it makes me feel respected that she, that she's doing that. So
yeah, and again, just some terminology. So you folks out there who aren't currently writing a book but want to, impress your friends at cocktail parties, book proposal is sort of the more formal second step. So again, query letters, 1 page, very quick synopsis to get the agent. Once you have the agent, you prepare a more formal book proposal. That's multiple pages. It dives into the market, all these other factors. It's much more formal, and that is usually where the comps would come in a more real way.
So the worst homework she gave me, I think I told Evangeline about this. She made me summarize my book in 4 sentences.
Yeah.
And I was like, excuse me? That what? And so she did the same, separate for me. That's how she likes to do all of it, is do it separate and then compare. And I will say she used 95% of my 4-sentence summary. But I enjoyed seeing hers because I'm like, whoa, she does get it. She gets my book, So yeah, so that's the hook. And then, so basically slush pile reader, they read the hook and they go, that sounds stupid. And they don't read on. If they read the 4-sentence hook, then they'll go on to the short synopsis, which is a rundown. And then it will say comps and stuff.
Yeah.
And bio of the author and things like that. And then there's this really long synopsis, which always messes me up because you have to tell them everything that happens in the book. There's no such thing. When I was telling my mom about it, she's like, but you're spoiling the ending. I'm like, they have to know that you have a good ending. They have to know that. This is not the back of a book blurb.
Yeah.
And so it's maddening to try to tell every important thing that happens
Yeah. The synopsis is
in
the
one
worst.
page.
It's
I
the
remember trying to come up with a synopsis, and what the image that kept coming to my head is that gif of SpongeBob SquarePants at the coffee shop just staring blankly into space. Because that's what it felt like for me. It's like, okay, summarize my whole book, 3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
All right, so Evangeline, let's go to you now, because you've done the comp process as well. So tell us which book you want to use for that, and also how you went about finding the comps.
So the one that I remember the most is the Wuthering Heights novel, which has been through several rounds of edits and is now probably not at all recognizable.
Yeah, see, our listeners did not know that you wrote Wuthering Heights.
Oh, I did not write Wuthering Heights, in fact. Oh my goodness. Emily Bronte would show up and beat me over the head. No, I wrote a novel inspired by Wuthering Heights.
And it's awesome. And
thank you.
I want to be a publisher so I can publish it.
So yeah, the first round of submissions, I was with a different agent. That was long before Curio. So what I looked for, because of course I thought that my book was unlike anything else. You know,
We have all been at that stage. Don't worry, authors. If you're at that stage listening, it's okay. You're fine.
Okay.
but so what I looked for though were books that had a tie-in with a previous book. So, and I found plenty of those. And I even found a couple because I have a bit of a supernatural element in mine. And, I found a couple of those as well. So there were a lot of dual narratives, dual time periods, the story happening in the present, the story happening in the past. I pulled some of those. And then I pulled some kind of contemporary women's fiction that was I think one of them was Mr. Darcy Ruined My Life or something like that.
That's a good comp.
Yeah, so pulling in the specifically the hero. Mm-hmm. And that was really useful because, chances are if you like Pride and Prejudice, you like Mr. Darcy, yeah. Which, is of course separate from the Brontes from Wuthering Heights, which, we could have a whole discussion. But anyway, what I was trying to do is pull in and show that connection between the historical book or the historical themed book or inspired book. And so it was like a little, middle school, high school essay compare and contrast, So yeah. I wrote little 1 to 2 paragraph little essays for each of those books, saying how it was alike and how it was different. And that's that was my comp section for that proposal. So it was definitely homework. It felt very much like homework.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like, again, you had several levels that you could comp them on, right? There's the historical level. There's the sort of inspired by this classic novel thing. There's the age group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you try to find books that incorporate multiple elements? Or you're like, here's the for fans of thing. Here's this one.
I think in later proposals, I did use that for fans of, or that it was really popular at the time to say your book was this meets that,
Yep.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's still going on.
Lisa, my agent did that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I definitely did that for some proposal somewhere that is escaping my memory now.
Yeah.
So did you feel like it was helpful for you, or did you feel like it was just basically
just homework?
Middle school homework assignment?
I think a lot of the time when we put effort into something that we kind of drag our feet on, it does end up being for our own good. It's okay.
Take your vitamins.
There's a reason I'm being asked to do this. It's hard because, it's that proposal didn't ultimately land a contract, which now I'm okay with because I really don't want that version of the book out. I prefer the version that is done now. But, all those steps get you to where ultimately the project is supposed to be, I think. And that can be a really long process. So in comparison, that comp process is a very small piece of a book journey, a project's journey.
Yes.
So, I mean, even though we're all happy to sit here and complain about it.
Yeah.
In the scope of
That's
things.
my jam. Complaining about all of the non-directly writing things that we have to do to be writers.
Yes. Well, I just said to a writer friend just the other day, I'm not interested right now in any of the stuff that has to do with being an author except for making stories, making up stories. And I specifically even didn't say writing stories because I'm dragging with writing. I want to be writing. I want to be, prolific, and I want the words to be coming fast, but they're not, but that's okay. What I, really want to be doing is making up stories. So
that can be your end goal. I think James Patterson or someone does this. They come up with the idea, then they tell the idea to the ghostwriters, and they write it down and everything. But you're just the idea person.
I don't know. Then we're gonna broach the topic of AI here. We're really close.
You're the idea person, and then you're gonna assign it to yourself.
Right.
As
yourself.
Okay, let's
see.
Heathcliff meets robots. Go write that story. Go.
You are your own ghostwriter, Evangeline.
Yes. Well, and I
Mr. Darcy is the Prince of Atlantis. Go.
I wouldn't really want somebody else. I wouldn't want somebody else writing my idea. Not really.
No.
No. It's the all the other stuff that goes that you're expected to do.
It's the marketing that I don't like, and that's what basically comps. That's what it is.
And I think nearly
marketing.
Every author says that. So
yeah, because you have to at the same time say how you are like everything, how you are like these things that are popular, but why yours is different at the same time.
No, that's a good segue to actually my first round of comps here. So, longtime listeners of the podcast will know that my first book project was sort of memoir-ish book about growing up in a particularly evangelical culture, and I left it behind, and I'm now a much happier person. But
Anglican. Woo.
Well, I left the book project behind, so we're good.
Oh.
Yeah. This wasn't some big faith statement I just made.
I thought you. Yeah, I misunderstood.
Do I count as evangelical if I'm an Anglican? I don't know. That's one of the questions I'm not going to answer.
It doesn't matter. You're a Christian.
I don't have to answer this because I'm not writing the book anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, can I just tell you?
Yes,
the original title for this book, before it went through all the editor process, I liked it. It's called, doing this flash thing with my hands, it's called Fishing for Leviathan.
Ooh.
But that was one of the first things in the editors is cut that. That's stupid, nobody will like it. But I still like it. So on my little outline here, Fishing for Leviathan. So because it's nonfiction, it's what my agent at the time called a memoir with the message. It does need to do exactly what you said, Mandy. And you need to show that it's like other things out on the market to show that there's people out there who will buy it, but it needs to be different in some respect, right? Mm-hmm. Can't be saying exactly what everyone else was. So it's sort of this needle you need to thread. And I hated finding the comps because I ended up being okay, well, is this memoir by this person, this memoir by this person? Mine's a little bit more positive. This one's all negative. Mine's just sort of negative. Or she's a woman, I'm a man.
He's old, I'm young.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And I spun it somebody who grew up in the 90s and aughts. It's okay. So, but that taught me some valuable things. First of all, it did show me where the market was, which was important. But second, and more importantly, it made me realize I dislike that market. I did not enjoy reading any of the comp books.
Oh, that's revealing.
Not throwing any shade on any of those authors, not any particular author, but I don't like those books. I would never read them on my own. Reading them was kind of painful. And I'd kind of be like, fine, if we're going to read this. Okay, let's hear this person complain some more.
Right, that's really revealing.
Yeah, it was revealing. It's
Wow.
like, maybe I shouldn't be in this market segment if I don't like the books.
That's a good
If
point.
I had not written my book, I never would have wanted to read it. That's exactly what I thought. It's like, oh, this book, Fishing for Leviathan, by this Matt Mellema guy. So I read it. Okay, yeah, Cry Me a River. Okay, it's just, so that was helpful in me eventually getting out of that. So I was just like, I should actually like the books that I read, I write.
Write about dinosaurs/dragons.
Yes. So funny you should mention that.
Yeah. Whoa. Was I correct in something?
You were.
That was so random. I just threw that out there.
Crazy.
I had no idea you had any interest in those.
So now writing middle grade, like fantasy adventure. Listeners, I'm sorry. I've told you this, but okay. So coming out next year, takes place in back in ancient times in this island where they still have dinosaurs, right? Okay. So I was trying to figure out as I'm going through the comps, what do I compare this to? It's like there's a ton of books about dragons, right?
How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning that one.
Yeah.
So I'd go through. There's a ton of YA, this, Evangeline, right? Because you've been in the YA space for a while. So many Dragon Rider, Dragon Friend, Dragon's Breath, Dragon Flame, Dragon Starlight, Dragon Moon.
Dragon Toe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Dragon everything. Yes. So I was like, okay, well, if my world has dinosaurs instead of dragons, that's kind of similar. There aren't a whole lot of other books. There's some books where they have it's dinosaurs exist. It's sort of in this, medieval fantasy realm, but they're for adults. So that was a hard sell to make. And it was it's kind of a bank shot with that. It was kind of a bank shot for the dragons. So I was trying to figure out what to do for the content. And of course, this whole time, as I'm complaining I can't find a direct comp, I'm like, if I find a direct comp, I will be mortified because some jerk would have written my book.
Exactly.
So that's going on. But also, I wanted to find other comps. I think for middle school stuff, it does help to show book comps to give you the vibe, right?
Okay,
I think,
even video games probably.
Yeah, so
Movies,
you just mentioned, Mandy, and Evangeline mentioned this to me earlier in the process, is your book kind of has a How to Train Your Dragon, the movie vibe. Not the book vibe, but the movie vibe.
I haven't read the book.
Movie's a lot better.
Yep.
That is unusual.
It is unusual, but it is true.
Yeah.
Okay.
The book is fine, but the movie's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, so the closest comp in terms of the overall spirit of the story is How to Train Your Dragon. But that made it a little tricky. So what I ended up doing for my query letter was I kind of used two old comps to sort of they weren't helpful for the market, but I hope they were helpful to give you the content. And looking back on it, I think this was a mistake. I thought of it as, I was like, hey, think of it as John Flanagan's Ranger's Apprentice series in the world of James Gurney's Dinotopia. Which makes some sense. Readers, if any of you readers have had boys who are really bookish, you probably know about the Ranger's Apprentice series.
Well, I would say if you're sending that proposal to the right editor, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about, so...
Yeah, so there's that, but Ranger's Apprentice is an older series, so it wouldn't work for the comps, but it does work in terms of, the heroes are the same age, there's a lot of factual things that the sort of feel is similar, and they're popular, but not too popular.
Right.
Dinotopia, the books don't quite match, but it gave me the world aesthetic, which might be a waste of a comp, I don't know. People have told me, I can't use this, but people have told me hey, your book's kind of like Harry Potter meets Jurassic Park.
Oh.
But I can't use that because it's tacky to use Harry Potter as a comp.
Because it's overdone.
It's overdone, even though, let's be real, half of all middle grade books are ripping off Harry Potter.
Yeah, all the student, the special kids who go to the school.
And my book has that. Like,
I know.
My student goes to the. Yeah,
I edited your book.
I hired you as to edit
Yes,
it.
I'm very familiar. But that's one of the things that my agent said. She said, the trick is we don't want to pick something wildly popular because then you're just setting, you just sort of, I don't know. I think it triggers kind of a cynic instinct in the editor, like, oh, really? You think you're the next Harry Potter?
Yeah, and also it looks a little amateurish, like that's the only book you've heard of.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I could see like in marketing, like if I were to like pitch if I were to buy like an Amazon ad or something, it wouldn't be a terrible thing to say my book is Harry Potter meets Jurassic Park for like the readers. But I would never pitch that to like editors.
Right.
Just because again, it would look amateurish and it's not what's done.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, all these these rules that we've just kind of stumbled across because we've been in the world long enough, and how easy it is to just make a faux pas, or I mean, thank goodness for agents and other writers who kind of like give you a little nudge here and there, let you know, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't pass our manuscript under the bathroom stall to the editor that you just saw go into the stall next to you. We don't do that.
We don't include a glitter bomb with every one of our packets.
Right.
You don't need an 8x10 signed glossy with yourself, Matt.
Yes.
It's okay.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so that was sort of our comp talk.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want this to be too like talk shop / writers, the things that writers all love to gripe about. But I do want to find like some sort of generalizable things that again would be useful for folks. Even if again, like let's say you're a visual artist or you're a singer-songwriter listening to this, or again, you're not an author, but you just enjoy stories. Are there any sort of broader lessons for you, Mandy, that you were able to take from this whole process? It's like, okay, finding my story, sort of breaking it down into parts and comparing it to other stories, did that help you understand the storytelling process better?
It was interesting to me because I really, particularly with this book, I didn't think a lot about, I didn't sort of analyze what I was doing as I did it. And I think that's probably why this one is better than my previous two, because I really was just in a box of trying to say, what is a novel? How do I do this? And for this one, I just decided, I'm in my 50s. I'm just going to write and not think about whether it makes sense or not. I'm just going to let the story go. And I think that's how I ended up with over 12 narrators, one of which is the barn. So, yeah. My barn is sentient. Anyway.
Does your barn have a name?
No. No, because
she's starred.
Okay, so Barney?
No. She speaks in first person, and no, I don't know why she's
the barn is a she.
I don't know why she is. She just
Are all
is.
barns she or just her? Like all ships are female.
I think this might be the only sentient barn in the known universe.
Okay.
Anyway. And so I didn't really think about what kind of book I was writing. I just let myself write it. And so to see it through my agent's eyes and to just sort of say, it is like this because, et cetera. I mean, the obvious things like set in the 20s, whatever. But the fact that she was able to see, most significantly, my theme of being the people on the margin, because I didn't say that to her, but that is what's in my heart when I wrote the book. I wanted it to be about people that are unseen and they don't have a voice. And so the fact that she saw that, I didn't find that out until we were talking about what comps. And so that was really helpful for me to see that that came through. And so it really has kind of made me see myself in the universe of authors, like what, where that maybe I do fit in, Oh, that's
Yeah.
even hard to say. Look what I did with my voice trying to say that. This is what imposter syndrome sounds like. But, it's like a glimmer of, like I'm not this wacko outlier. Like I've done something that potentially could have a place. And that's the place. And I will say, unlike your experience where you didn't like the books that you were looking at, I like I said, I checked out every book I could find at the library that she had mentioned as comps. Good sign. 2 of them, there's like a really long waiting list, so I couldn't get them. So that's a good sign. But I bought, I think, 4 of them after I got them from the library. I liked them so much that I'm like, oh, I'm buying this book.
It's probably a good sign.
That's a really good sign. So
sign that you're writing the right sort of books and also that your comps are good.
Yes. Yeah. So it made me feel like I'm being true to myself. I'm writing the kind of story that I've always wanted to write.
Yeah. And also, like, once again, you have to use things like that, like, my book is similar to Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein. You have to write that sentence and put yourself in that same category, Mandy. You're doing it. You're doing it.
I guess. We'll see. But I do. I mean, there is a part of me where I'm like, all the editors are going to like snort laugh. They're going to be like, who are these people, who think this? So.
I think when they're getting a proposal from an agent, I mean, the snort laughs are perhaps like reserved for the slush pile and the ones who the query letters that begin with "God told me to write this book."
Yeah,
and if you don't publish it, you are going against God's will.
And I know where you live.
Right.
Yeah. Well, my son-in-law, my daughter Emmy's husband Lucas, actually reads the slush pile for a literary journal. And so he has some pretty eye-opening stories. And that's helpful. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not like, okay. I'm not, they are imposters. No, I'm kidding. But there's some pretty bad stuff that they have to read out there.
I like how your, exercise of finding comps reinforced your, conviction that you were writing what you were supposed to be writing.
Yes. Definitely.
I think that's like perhaps the best thing that I've heard that came out of the comp process.
I didn't expect it, so that was nice. Yeah.
How about you, Evangeline? Any sort of broader lessons you took from the comp ordeal?
Well, I think reading broadly, across genres, across authors, because we all tend to these are my favorite authors, or this is my favorite, I'll read Jane Eyre again and again and again, but pushing yourself to, read outside your comfort zone, and also experience other art outside of your own art.
Yes.
I think is, we were at a concert Saturday night, and I don't know why, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's what I need to do with my character in this certain situation. And I have no doubt that the creativity that I was witnessing and the art that I was witnessing had something to do with stirring that up. I could not tell you how.
So it
or
wasn't
why.
like a lyric or anything that got you? It was just
No.
Wow, that's cool.
Out of nowhere. Oh,
See, when I can't think of stuff, I'm just like, oh, time to listen to more folk songs.
Yeah, or just time to go stare at a painting or go to a play or whatever.
Do you know what I like to do? I like to go to thrift stores, and I don't know why, but they'll have, what do you think I'm going to say? I don't know what he thinks I'm going to say.
I just picture coming over to your house and hey, Peter, is Mandy here? No, she's down at the thrift store looking for ideas.
Looking for ideas, aren't we all?
Just go down. You have your hands crossed behind your back. You're staring at a 1970s leisure suits. Art.
Well,
this is a character
that could be
right
a thing. But more specifically, they actually will sell old diaries and old snapshots.
Oh.
And so initially, I bought them when I was teaching creative writing. I would buy snapshots and just pass them out at the beginning of the class and have the kids write about what was going on in the picture. But then I was like, hey, wait a minute, I'm a writer. I could probably use that. And then the journals. I have this one diary. Actually, I'm really glad we brought this up. Hopefully I can find it because I'm trying to think of an idea for another book so I cannot think too much about waiting for answers from publishers. But anyway, it was this diary from like the turn of the century. And in the back of it, she has autographs from her friends. And some of the autographs are hilarious. Like, these are some sassy friends. and like her diary, she's like writing about the weather and just such random things. Huh. And to just think of like, this was a real person.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really what inspires me, is anything that makes me go, there's more to this that I can't see, and therefore I have to make it up. So like a folk song will be from the perspective of, I don't know, like a hobo or a dance hall girl. Or the song that inspired my whole book is called Barroom Girls by Gillian Welch. That is where the entire book came from. So, but
you never know. Like, you never know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
That if you didn't like find that art, take the time to appreciate it.
It would be cool if we could include
about.
stuff like that in the proposal.
Have like
If
a mood
you like
board.
folk songs by Gillian Welch and Patty
Why
Griffin
not?
and
Well, isn't
the
that
Milk
sort of-
Carton Kids, then
I
you
feel
will
like
like Mandy's.
that's become a thing in certain genres, right?
Oh, really?
Where it's like if you're an author, you need to have like a mood board.
Like your aesthetic.
Oh,
Yes.
I could do that. I mean, y'all have seen my pictures in on my clothesline in
That's true.
in my office. I mean,
That's true.
that's how I roll.
Yeah, that's just part of your...
Looks like Mandy's like unraveling this very intense conspiracy.
Yes, it does.
They're all strung together, they're like attached
They're
with
even
strings.
kind of diagonal.
Yeah.
It's true.
You're solving a murder in your
It's true. Well,
in
and
your
it's
office.
funny because the face that I clipped out of the picture that I used for my bad guy, one of my bad guys in my book, just happens to be a famous boxer. And so every now and then people will go in there and go, "Isn't that Conor McGregor?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Wait, Conor McGregor
I am not.
is your
Yes.
villain?
Yes. And then I have a famous baseball player whose name I can't remember right now, but it's really funny. I'm like, someone will come in here and be like, "Is she stalking Conor McGregor?" And that baseball player?
What is this madness? Like,
I do
don't
think it's funny
understand.
though that my bad people come from photographs, but my pro tags and my side characters typically are almost always John Singer Sargent paintings.
Oh, interesting.
But my bad
Okay.
guys are real people.
Well, and that also underlines like there's a lot of different sources you can get for inspiration as you're going about a
Exactly.
story, and one of those actually can be the comp process,
Yes,
right?
right.
And yeah, like for me, sort of some of the lessons I was getting, and I already told you the lessons that I had for my memoir. The lesson was, I don't like this. But another lesson I did get from that was learning how to go a little easier on authors if I really dislike their work or like I think their argument's bad, because sometimes you can kind of paint yourself into a corner with arguments, or you feel like you have to shoehorn something in to fit like a narrative.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so like, you know, people like point out in like an article I wrote, it's like some point that I made that's bad. And I was thinking, yeah, I wasn't sure about that either, but I had to close the loop somehow.
That's a really good point.
Or
because it's so not black and white. It can't be black and white, because if it's easily black and white, then your book's been done.
Yeah, or just the
Good
point
line.
that the things you write in your essay are a very small part of you, and sometimes it's
Yes.
almost a character you assume, right? So that's those are some lessons that I took. But for my current book, you know, some of the lessons that I do think helped me just in terms of story is, yeah, you have to break down the story into its component parts objectively, almost like in like this detached scientific way, right? It's no longer my precious little baby.
It's
that
not
I've been-
your own beating heart in your hands.
exactly. It's like, okay, fantasy epic, middle grade. It has this element, this element, this element. It's told in this style.
Yeah,
Right.
it's at 30,000 feet.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah,
20.
and it makes you realize, oh, lots of other people have done this.
Right.
Which is, I always hate doing the market research.
Yes.
When you see because you're like, oh wow, this is sort of what I was going at, but it's a real book. See, it has like a cover and everything.
Yeah.
But it's just a fact of life that for all the ideas we have, lots of other people have similar ideas, and we need to make our peace with that.
Yes.
And not like my book is not totally unique.
Well,
Right.
and remember that the people that read that book and loved it want something else like that book.
Yep.
And so
Right.
they're going to be really excited when they hear you talk at an author talk or at a bookstore or something, or they see the blurb that says for readers of this, or
Well, yeah.
dinosaurs in space, or whatever it is. And they're
Ooh.
like, oh, that's
Cool.
like this book
Oh.
that I
Yeah.
loved, and I have not found anything like it. I mean, so you're doing yourself a favor, even if it feels like, oh, everybody else, oh, this has been done.
Well, my biggest issue, I will not mention the book on air. I'll tell you all later. But there is a book that I think you guys know, I've said before, I do not like, but a lot of people like
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And I knew that Elisa, my agent, I'm like, she's going to mention that book as a comp. She's going to mention it. And she did.
She did.
And I just flat out told her, I'm like, I really don't like that book. And she she says, well, okay, but, and then she had to like tell me all the I know it's sort of like that book, like, but yeah, so you
It's
got to
better.
go.
It's better.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So anyway, you got to be like, well, all right, trust the professional.
Well, first of all, Evangeline, dinosaurs in space sounds like a great idea.
I think you should do that.
I'm
You're welcome.
Making a note about that.
Dinosaurs in space.
But
To all
also,
our
Evangeline,
Buffett
it does
fans.
get another sort of lesson here is what I think the term is the abundance mindset, right? Where I think a lot of us as authors can get very territorial about our ideas, like, this is my territory.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who gets to write about kids riding dinosaurs, nobody else.
Right.
But the simple fact of the matter is, if you're the sort of kid who likes to read books about dinosaurs, you're probably going to want to read more than one book about dinosaurs.
And that would be such a bummer
And
if there were
if
only
you
one.
read books by that other author, the one who I'm all jealous of, well, maybe you'll want to come read my book next.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's completely counterintuitive to a lot of the way we do things, but it is a simple fact of life.
Fact of life. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. I'm probably going to spend some quality time on Amazon later. And,
or you could go to a website of a private bookseller.
oh yeah, this is one of your.
This is one of my spiels.
Yep. Well, whether it's Amazon or some other website of some private bookstore of your choice, I wish all the authors there good luck with the comps, and all you folks who aren't currently writing a book, I hope this helped you understand a little bit about the pieces of story, and maybe hug your author friend, maybe make fun of them. They probably deserve both. And anyway, things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. The fire is down to embers, the customers are trundling home, and you've polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. If you have about 28.9 seconds or so to spare right now, please rate and review this show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.